Good evening, everyone. We're glad you could join us for today's session on digital skill project management. Let me begin by introducing our speaker for today, Sumanth Upadrasta. Sumanth, a Bengaluru based professional with over a decade of experience in B2B SaaS sales, account management, and digital adoption agency. With a strong foundation in both sales and project management, Sumanth has built a reputation for driving measurable business growth, mastering the entire sales cycle from lead generation to long term client success. Certified in ITIL Foundation, CRA, and Agile Scrum Master, Sumanth combines structure with strategy and brings his passion for learning to others as a guest speaker and trainer across various industry forums. From managing high stakes projects to nurturing lasting client relationships, Sumanth's work reflects his belief in thoughtful execution, adaptability, and meaningful impact. Please join me in welcoming Sumanth. Before we start today's session, I request that our learners post their queries in the Q&A tab. We will address as many as possible if the time permits. At the end of the session, we will display three polls on your screens and request that you actively participate in these polls to help us understand your grasp of what was covered in this webinar. Correct answers will then be displayed once the polls have been answered. With that in mind, here's a very warm welcome to you, Sumanth. We're glad to have you present at the Ed Talk webinar. Over to you for the main session.
Thank you, Meghna. And good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are joining in from India, assume. So that's why I said good evening. For those of you, if you're joining somewhere outside of India from other time zones, then good morning, good afternoon, or wherever you're joining from. Can't say good night. So let me start off with just these three. So before we get into project management, and we'll discuss project management in a bit, I thought I'm going to cover a little bit about what's happening currently in India in the industry in particular. There are new technologies that are coming up. I think all of you would have heard about AI and what AI is doing in the world. All of you would have heard about robotics process automation and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And like I said, AI is taking over the world. So when a new technology like this is there in the market, what generally happens in the market? There's every company who tries to take advantage of it for two reasons. Some companies would like to take advantage of it by incorporating some of these technologies in their day-to-day lives, how they function as a company, how they operate their day-to-day activities. And some companies, on the other hand, incorporate all of them in the way they're promoting their products and services to their customers. So, which is technically incorporating some of these latest technologies into their business models. So, why is this related to what all of you are here for today? Anytime a new technology is in the market, new teams would have to adopt. You'll have to incorporate the technology into your day-to-day operations and your day-to-day business and functions. And all of these activities is a project in itself. A project, therefore, I'm sure all of you would know, those of you who are aware, so those of you who are from project management background, I'm sure you'll be able to relate to this. But for those of you who are not from project management background, you'll be able to somehow relate that let's say a wedding, for example. Not sure how many of the audience here are married, but a wedding in itself is a huge project. Now, I'm don't not sure if we'll be able to run a poll here, but just wanted to see that what do you think? I can see a bunch of questions here. So, uh, what do you think generally happens in a wedding? There's so many things that people look at in a wedding. That is, when to have the wedding. That's one. Where, how much money we have to spend, how much resources we are going to invest. I see destination as one of the questions. Yes. So there's a lot that happens basically in a wedding. Food, of course, and there's a lot of other factors that generally go into. Now, who handles all of these? It's you or your family most of the times. More than you, basically, it's your family. And when they have to plan wedding, if wedding is scheduled next week, then I don't think they'll be able to plan it just this week onwards. So it'll have to be planned well in advance, depending upon the way in which you want to have the wedding done. So, well, event management, I see, is one of the options as well. So, sure, event management companies do that too, or whoever does it. What are they doing is they are executing a project. Now, when they are executing a project, each of these projects have so many components in it. You mentioned budget, you mentioned organizing, you mentioned food, destination, etc., and whatnot. People who are involved. You need a priest for a wedding. So you need to have the right people in. Probably you need a band for the wedding. You need to have the right people in for the band. So there are various things that one needs to work towards to ensure that all of these things happen very well on the day of the wedding, which means when the wedding is scheduled for so and so date, imagine if the band does not show up on time or the priest doesn't show up on time. If the priest doesn't show up, there's no wedding, of course. So it's a huge flaw. So imagine the real stakeholders in the wedding, the bride and the groom are not even there, or they're late. So or you couldn't pay for the food. So there are so many ways in which a wedding can go wrong. Now, it is the responsibility of whoever is managing this, whether it's an event management organization or whether it is your family who is doing all of these, to handle all of these aspects to ensure that the time of the wedding, the date and time of the wedding, you are able to execute it completely, which is a classic example. I've given this example for those, by the way, like I said, who are new to project management. For those of you who are already into project management, like I said, this would just be a quick refresher for you because we're discussing project management essentials. So, yep, the like wedding is a project which has so many components. Every project has so many components in it. And what we are going to do as part of today's class is we're going to look at some of the major components of common projects, the core common components of some of these projects. There's a lot of other projects which may or may not have these components, but that's okay. Each and every project is very different. Each and every project is unique in its nature. And as somebody who's a project management professional, you are skilled enough to align yourself, your abilities, your knowledge to be able to execute all of those projects in the right manner, the way they're intended to be executed. So, on that note, we'll jump into the webinar for today. For the next good 30 minutes, I'm going to focus on a few slides. We'll talk about some overview of project management, what happens in project management, what people need to do in project management. Feel free, like Meghna said at the start, to ask any questions. We're going to address that in the later half of the call. But please don't refrain from asking any questions. I understand that when you're new to a field, you'll always wonder a few things about that specific field. So just let it out. If you have time, we'll answer it on the call itself. If not, we can always take them offline. Good. On that note, give me a second. I'm going to share my screen and then we're going to get into project management. All right. I'm Sumanth, and I'm going to be handing this webinar for all of you on project management fundamentals. Like I said, if you're experienced enough, this will just be a lovely refresher for all of you. Please feel free to add any viewpoints that you may have as part of this webinar. So, we'll get into a few principles of project management. Now, first principle I had to put in was obviously the scope. Let's take with the same example. Basically, the scope is two people getting married is the scope. At the end of the day, you want them to be married. And for that, you need to have all the items listed. So the scope should define every activity that needs to be done to ensure that the scope is met, the objective is met. So you have to define what a project scope is in project management. The first step anyone would do in project management is to define the scope of the project. It will have everything in them, like I said. Now, once you understand what the scope is, you will also have to come up with processes where you can avoid or prevent scope creep. Some of you probably would have heard what scope creep is. Scope creep is you have a certain things that one needs to do in a project. You don't want those things to go out of the line, out of the boundary, as we call it in project management. So that is what preventing scope creep means, to ensure that you have control mechanisms, you have additional fuel in available so that there won't be any power cut during the wedding. So all of these additional items that you prepare to avoid where things can go wrong is what scope creep is all about. So you'll have to do all of that, and you have to define it in the scope as well, especially when you're defining the project scope. And the work breakdown structure. Now, this is where it's interesting, and I gave you a classic example of the wedding. Not everyone is going to do all of that. I mean, you're not going to call food, the band, and the priest and all by yourself. I'm sure you're assigning tasks to other people, that my uncle is going to handle food, my mother is going to speak with the priest, my father is going to speak with the food, the catering, etc. So you have individual tasks for all of these people that you have assigned it to a list of people. We'll come to that, the stakeholder aspect, in a while. But all of that also is something that you need to bake into the scope, and you need to break down on what is their work. That's called a WBS in project management, which is the work breakdown structure. You decompose and break everything into what needs to be done for each individual, at what time, when do they have to complete it, how do they have to complete it. You define the whole thing as part of the project scope management. And then the stakeholder, like I said, and who is doing all of these? Now, are these people skilled enough for these? Can they pull it off? Do they have enough contacts? I'm still on the same example, so just think of it as contacts. But otherwise, in general, you're looking at skills. If somebody needs to develop an AI automation tool, then whether those developers that are there as part of your project are skilled enough or not. So you need to align with all of them. You need to speak with all of them personally and ensure that they are aware of what are their end goals are. So you need to, this is like going to your father or to your uncle and telling them that I need catering to be arranged for 50 people. Now, okay, but for what? It's not for a birthday party, it's for a wedding. So you need to tell them that this is the scope completely. I've chosen you because of XYZ. You need to execute in so and so manner, etc. So communicating all of that is extremely crucial, very, very important. So the first principle that we're going to cover in project management is the entire project management scope that will have all the work that needs to be done, boundaries that are set, and control mechanisms in this to ensure that things don't go wrong. You break down the list of activities and put stakeholders assigned to them who are the ones who are going to handle the specific project. That's the first principle. Please, again, like I said, feel free to put any questions there. Team is going to collate all of them and we can answer. Let's get into time, and very crucial part. One where there is a specific deadline. The deadline is the day of the wedding. One needs to deliver that wedding on time. It's critical. It's very important. So if the day of the wedding is December 31st, let's pick a nice day, December 31st. Now, you can't start planning the wedding on December 10th or 11th. That's just 20 days. You might have to plan well in advance. In fact, you might have to probably give your clothes for stitching. So there's so many things that you need to plan well in advance. Those of you who want to probably work out and be ribbed by the time of wedding, you might end up doing that too. So, but there's time involved. You can't get all of that done in 1 week time. So what you are doing is you are listing down, as time management in any project, you are listing down the list of activities that one need to do as part of that project, and you are listing down the start times, the duration, the end times of each of those aspects. Let's say slimming down for wedding, it has to start September 1st and has to end November 30th, and I need a 3-month window for me to show visible difference in my physique. Taylor, I need to book the venue in advance. So booking venue in advance will not have duration because it's just only one phone call to the venue. Maybe it would require a visit to the venue and paying some advance or so, but there's some time involved in all of that. So every aspect of project management, or of a project, there's time management involved, and all the time needs to be mentioned properly somewhere They have to be clearly called out so that everybody, like we've discussed in the previous slide, all the stakeholders associated with the project are aware of what timelines are available so that they can plan themselves better, plan all their activities better. How do you do that? The time management part. Let's say, for example, you have something called as a Gantt chart. Those of you would have seen Gantt chart, you would know. If not, I'm sure all of you are on your laptops or mobile phones, and please Google. You'll see what a Gantt chart is. Gantt chart is a chart of activities that talks about the entire project, the list of activities, dependencies, which means unless and until my uncle speaks with the caterer, I would not know the budget for my for catering food at my wedding. And unless and until I don't know the budget, when am I going to the bank, when am I withdrawing that money? So there's dependencies, which means somebody has to complete a task, something comes out of it, and from that I need to do some other activity. So all the dependencies, who is progressing on what, all of that you will be able to bake in into the time management piece on a Gantt chart. Look at a Gantt chart. It's a very beautiful, interesting chart that one needs to. So, a basic thing for all project managers is at any point of time, you need to be able to create your own Gantt charts. So, it's just start simple Gantt charts for your normal day to day activities. It's a tip that I always give fellow budding project managers where create your own Gantt charts for every simple activity. Let's say you want to apply for a visa, you're doing your travel booking. Create a simple Gantt chart for it. There's a long weekend coming up next week for August Independence Day in India. So create a Gantt chart. The Gantt chart, you can put in that I need to plan, I need to come up with a place, I need to decide a location, etc. Do all of that, and you're the only stakeholder in that. But if you're going with friends, probably add them, give them some tasks as well. It's very interesting to learn time management on a Gantt chart. Critical path method. Now, there are there are some, ignore the terminology. Do not get into all the terminology. Sometimes it might sound complicated. So what I are doing in critical path method is there are a list of activities that one needs to complete. And if you find the sequence of all of those activities that needs to be done, so you will know what is my critical path to success, which means the activity that I need to do first and the activity that I need to do the last, and my journey between these activities to arrive at the destination, which is the day of the wedding, to execute that project. So that is critical path. So a way to identify that is critical paths. And and in this entire journey, there are milestones. We all know what milestones are. Milestones, you go on a road trip, you will be able to see milestones on the way, 10 kilometers away, 20 kilometers. They're all called milestones, mile markers, as we, in a typical the terminology, American terminology, they call mile markers. In India, you see kilometers and all that. There you see miles. So at every point in time, there are some significant steps, which is good. The budget discussion is resolved. It's a huge milestone. You've already sorted the money. Otherwise, you have to one concentrate on getting the wedding done, but at the same time you're also worrying, my god, where am I going to get money and all that. But suddenly if you go to the bank, you deposit all that, and once all of that's done, finally it's a big relief that good, this specific activity has been completed. So that way you'll be able to track your progress based on some of these key milestones. Budget done, food done, trees done, good, everything else is sorted. You're on track to execute the wedding on time as planned. So again, a crucial aspect of project management is the time management piece as well. And then monitoring. All of this is great. You're going to put everything in the chart, but at some point of time, you need to also keep monitoring it. You can't just create a Gantt chart today and then 3 months later come back and see, oh my God, everybody is delayed. People are actually late. They're not completing their assigned tasks, and that's crisis. You don't want to get into that part. Instead, regularly, continuously, and consistently, you need to continue to track what progress is being made on each of these activities by all of the stakeholders. So that way you will know if there is anyone who's missing their deadlines, if anyone not confident enough of completing the assigned tasks, you'll be able to somehow find and prevent all of them. Even if you can't prevent, you'll at least find a workaround, you'll find an alternate. That is why Time management is an absolutely crucial principle for those of you planning to get into project management. Start apply this. Take everything as a project in life. I am not talking about software projects, also I'm giving you a simple life example of a wedding. So don't get into the definitions. Definitions will be helpful, of course, eventually for you when you're learning the course. Probably when you get into this online course with Manipal, when you sign up, you will anyway learn all the terminology. But just to understand what these courses are all about, just think of it in such a way that there is a project called wedding and you're executing it. That's principle two. Again, post any questions on time management. We'll address all of them towards the end. Principle three, another crucial one. There it is. You cannot breathe today in the world without money. Now, you cannot execute any project without money. Now, who manages all the money? If you've been given a project, who manages? If in a wedding, who manages all the money? Somebody has to take the responsibility of handling all the costs. You know that you have to complete the wedding in so and so budget, and that budget, I keep it with me. I will allocate some budget out of it to somebody and tell them that go, you take this, but get a caterer, you take this, get me a venue, etc. So at some point in time, one has to be the cost manager within the project. Or you, as a project manager, you should be aware of what is the cost that's happening. Otherwise, what happens is the task that you gave for somebody to just get a caterer, he or she will go and get a five-star caterer, which probably is 3x your budget. You don't want to spend that. You don't want to get into all of that. Instead, when you define a project plan, you also have to bake in the cost budgets. That's where the cost baseline comes in. You have to put in and specifically mention that here is the budget. This is the budget in which we need to execute, and we need to see whether we are able to finally meet that or not. Always things may not work the way you intended. Always things will go wrong. Suddenly, somewhere you'll end up spending more money. Somebody demands more money at the end of the wedding, etc. Hence, you need to have a contingency reserve, which is some additional budget available as contingency. You don't want to use that unless it's a crisis situation or an unforeseen or an event or a risk that happens. You don't want to touch all of that. So there is the cost baseline, which is an approved budget for the project. And you also have contingency, which are some funds that are allocated for unforeseen events or risks within the project. But now, wedding is done. Now, when you prepared yourself that you're going to get married, I'm sure you're also thinking about where do I need to buy an apartment, because suddenly your rent will be increased. You'll be staying with family, not a bachelor or a single person anymore. So your costs are going to increase, and you need to see that, oh, this is the time for me to get a new job because I need my salary to increase. I have to now handle a family. So all of this, what you're doing is you're forecasting. You're ensuring that when I get married, for my future expenses, how do I need to all that? Again, if you're putting all of that for a project, you're thinking about all of that, you are somehow noting all of that, baking it into a project plan, that my expenses for this particular project is X. And once the project gets completed, now, there might be an additional support that I need to provide for this project. And for that, these are my expenses. And for that, what am I doing? From where do I need to get my funds? All of that. So, all of this will get into cost management. So, at the end of the day, in a nutshell, again, cost management is an extremely crucial principle for every project. You all have to execute your projects purely within the cost that it's already baselined, which is the cost baseline. Have some always for contingency, but always prepare for any future projects as well if you are a project manager. That's your principle three, cost management. And finally, quality. I don't know how I need to relate this to the wedding example, but at the end of the day, when you deliver a project, you know what we can do is, when a wedding gets completed, you have spent so much on the wedding. At the end of all that, somebody is going to come to you and tell you, "Oh my God, the food is so terrible at the wedding." And imagine you get to hear all of that feedback. Suddenly, you'll get disappointed. You don't want to. It feels you somehow pulls you down. You might always be positive and tell them, no, I don't care what people think, basically. I've just invited you, come eat food and go. but please don't give us feedback. So if you're somebody like that, but that's okay. But not everyone is like that. People get really bogged down. So quality of all of these things are also important. Imagine you're speaking, you're getting clothes stitched, and suddenly they're not stitched properly, and the, there'll be a wardrobe malfunction in the wedding. So there are so many ways in which quality impacts the end result in the end. So when you are allocating project tasks to people, when you are coming up with budget, when you are assigning it to certain list of stakeholders, the one principle that you should never forget is you also need to go and tell them that, look, this has to be of the best quality, this needs to be the right person, this has to be of superior quality, etc. You need to communicate all of that. So the planning and setting quality standards relevant to these activities is also done by you as a project manager. And how do people know? Because what's good for you may not be good for somebody else. So, which is where you need to also have some standards. You will probably tell that this is what the quality means. Let me show you an example. You need to discuss that. And while they are going and actually executing their tasks, you need to ensure that you need to keep observing and monitoring whether they're actually doing it the way you have suggested them to, whether they're following all the quality requirements and measurements. Otherwise, you'll have to do quality control to fix it, to fix things. Otherwise, the output will be very terrible if things do not go well with good quality. So, what you are doing as part of quality management is in every task, some people execute tasks in one way, some people execute it in another way. Who decides what's quality? That's where the standards come in. You'll have to set assigned standards for every project. You'll put in some standards and you will tell that people have to follow these standards if you're executing tasks for my project. So, how do you measure whether quality or not? That's where KPIs would come in. For those of you, if you use KPIs in your company, so you know. For some of you students, particularly, you'll know what key performance indicators are. Indicators that will actually show you how effectively you're able to complete a certain task. So, while giving you a task, I will tell you, look, you need to complete this task in the next 5 days. So, I've given you a KPI, a performance indicator. If you're able to execute it in the next 5 days, then you've done well on your indicator, your performance indicator, you're able to do well. Now, quality audits, how do I know whether you're doing it or not? I need to completely be focused on what you are currently doing to ensure that I audit. That's where the quality audits would come in, where I'll be able to have somebody review your speed of execution, whether you're following whatever quality standards I've set or not, whether you're going to finish the task on time or not. Either I'll do it or I'll ask somebody else do the audit. And at some point in time, I should also give you feedback if I sense there is something wrong. Or you can ask me for feedback always that, look, you have given me this task. I'm supposed to complete this in the next 5 days. I'm currently at this progress. What do you think? You can ask me, and I can always tell you that you're going to meet your target, you're not going to meet your target, etc. If not, what do we need to do together to help improve that? All of this is part of quality management. So when you study a proper project management course, quality management is a major component. You can even get certified on some of these quality management practices. There are quality experts. There are people who actually focus specifically on quality. Go to LinkedIn and look at quality professionals, and you'll see a lot of them. Lean Six Sigma, so many professionals on quality. So that's principle number 4 of project management. Now, we've looked at principles, and before we get into the project life cycle, we have looked why are all these principles important? Because they form the structure of all your project plans. You create a project plan, you come up with a document that talks about how to execute my wedding. And for that wedding, you have created a detailed project plan of who does what, when, how much, why, how do I mitigate risks, quality control, etc. You have done all of that. Now you need to initiate it. You need to start. The project starts. All of this is project prep. And now once the project starts, then you need to have a proper project initiation phase. What do? in the initiation phase is you're going to sit, look back at your project plan and see whether if we are able to execute all of these on time as planned within budget, will we see success or not? Do you need to do that feasibility study as part of your initiation phase? Feasibility study is extremely crucial so that you will know beforehand whether what you're doing is going to result in success or failure. And then you need to have a business case for all of this. Imagine it's not your money, no? You need to probably have your parents spend on your wedding, etc. You need to justify that. Look, I'm about to get married. Here is how I planned it. It is this budget. These people are helping me getting married. I need the money you're providing. And then, if your business case is strong, you're going to be allocated the funds for you to execute your project in this. Stakeholder identification, like I said, who are all the stakeholders that are important for you, both sides, which is on your side who are planning the wedding and even on the other partner's side, whether they are all doing the same thing too. Because you show up at a wedding venue, your family is all ready. But what if the other family is not ready too? So, all the stakeholders, internal, external, everyone who has influence on the outcome of the project, you need to identify all those stakeholders and list them. Obviously, you cannot give them tasks. You can't go to your partner's family and tell them that you need to do XYZ activities. That doesn't look good. So that you need to identify, at least you need to know that, oh, those are also unknown stakeholders who might also be important. And wherever possible, you need to have some control on what's happening at their end as well. And now that you know all of this, at the end of project initiation phase, you're going to create a project charter. A project charter, like I said, is that you have the plan already. You're going to create a complete charter which has the Gantt chart. It has everything related to the project, all the activities, all the stakeholders, the timelines, everything baked in into a complete project charter, which will have access. The charter will have access to multiple people, people who are associated with executing tasks, executing budget, etc. So that is the initiation phase in the project life cycle. What is project life cycle? Life cycle is you start off a project and you execute a project. That's the life of a project. A project gets initiated, a project gets worked upon, and a project gets completed, closed, basically. You close a project, conclude a project, in fact. So that's the life cycle of a project. And in that life cycle, the first phase is the initiation phase. Now, you've done the first phase, initiation. Now is where the real project comes in. You're executing it, you're monitoring it, and you're controlling it. Now, monitoring and control, you can call it as pretty much the same phase, because whenever you monitor, you see something, you're going to work on it. So that's there. Execution, of course, is the activities that you do, that you're currently doing in the project. So both of these is the real meat of the project. You're looking at the tasks that are happening. You will see real time whether all of this. So imagine, let's say you have an image like this where you see this is my budget, or my budget is going up, down, it's spending, etc. People are spending it well. Currently, it's under control. Let us see the timelines. I'm going to meet my timeline, not my timeline, etc. Everything is under control. So you are monitoring and controlling while tasks are being executed in the background. So that is the entire segment of after the initiation, the execution part happens, and along with execution, you're also monitoring and controlling. In typical projects, people mostly track all of these activities using a tool. We're going to come to that in the later part of this presentation, but all of these mostly will be done by a tool. And as a project manager, you'll have dashboards and real-time insights into how some of these activities are happening. So that way you'll have complete control on what's happening on the project, and you can fix issues as needed, etc. So that's the execution and monitoring control of project management, of project lifecycle. And the closing is where finally the wedding is over, it's executed. Now, what happens here? Look at the, take the wedding example again. Once again, you formally complete, the wedding is completed. You'll have to make payments to people for the work that they have done. Maybe at your end or somebody else, some outside vendors, you'll have to pay them off. So financial closure is a crucial aspect of any project too. Some lessons you would have learned, which is, oh, I shouldn't have spent more here. if we had probably worked on this before, we would have done this on time, etc. So there will always be some lessons learned on the project which are actually very important, so that tomorrow when you are advising somebody in your own family for their weddings, you will know that, look, when I got married, these are the things that went wrong. So beware. So you need to have all those lessons learned as a very important phase of project life cycle. And then, what about all the people who worked for you? Your family members and all of that, you need to thank them, appreciate them. In typical Indian wedding ceremonies, you always have this phase where you go and gift something to people who've helped you, supported you, etc. So, all of that. Same is the case with every project. Once the project gets completed, you need to ensure that you've paid off all the vendors. You've listed down activities that have gone wrong and what lessons you have learned out of it, and more importantly, who successfully completed the project. You need to recognize their efforts. Only then you'll be able to leverage some of their services for next projects as well. So that way, closing phase is also extremely crucial in project life cycle. So what we have looked at so far is what happens in a project, the key important principles of a project. We looked at the time, we looked at cost, we looked at stakeholders, and we looked at quality. And once you have all of that, you have the project plan. You're getting into the closing, the project life cycle, which is where you initiate the project first. And once you've initiated, you continuously monitor and track, do quality control, etc. And once the project gets closed, you need to take feedback, give feedback, recognize people, close any loose ends that are there, and ensure that you delivered a successful project. That's the project life cycle. Now, that brings to me a phase where, let me uh, just a second. Yeah. Yeah. So that brings me to the next part where people ask, or people always ask, where do we need to see all of this? There's this beautiful dashboard that you can see here on the right side, but you need to have tools like that to execute projects. Obviously, you don't use these for the wedding example, so let's probably move on from the wedding example for now. That was very important, of course, for those who are new to project management. To experienced folks, like I said, still a refresher. And you need to have a tool. You can't just do it on Excel sheets. Excel sheet, there are so many people who execute things even on Excel sheets. So Excel sheets is very difficult to handle all of that, but there are great project management tools out there. So one of the best project management tools I personally use, I've recommended it to a lot of people around the world use, is Jira. What happens in Jira is, ignore all that. I mean, you can always Google about Jira. You can do that. I'm going to show you a little video of Jira as well. So that way you'll understand what happens within Jira. So, you know what? Let's look at the video and then come back. Probably that'll be better because it gives you an example of what happens within Jira. Just a second. There you go.
You probably come across the word Jira. You
I just wanted to check, Meghna, is the voice audible of the video?
Yes, yes. Can you play it for a second? The voice is audible.
you probably come across the word Jira.
It is. But it's
Well,
not that clear, so if you could emphasize on the
my
important
name is
bits.
Kevin Lee, and welcome to Atlassian and
Right. Yep, we can do that too. Let me get to the important aspect of what Jira is. So it's a tool. It's a software. Some of you would have used similar softwares, of course. There's a lot more. Trello is another one. So Jira helps you track, have the whole project plan. You can organize, you can create tasks, you can assign their tasks, you can completely manage a specific project on Jira. So that's what Jira does as a tool. I'll tell you why specifically. Probably we can skip the video, like Meghna said. We can move back to what Jira does. It has list of specific activities like task tracking. You can create assigned tasks. Let's say this task you need to complete. You're going to create, list down the activities involved of that task, and you're going to assign that task to a specific user. So, and how you can then track whether those users are actually able to perform those tasks as planned. You'll be able to do all of that on Jira. Sprint planning, which means the entire wedding, like I said, or any project, you can organize into multiple sprints. That way, multiple people are performing different tasks at the same time. And when they are performing different tasks at the same time, you're saving time. That's the agile way to work. So there are people who are making progress on all of these. So that way you can have all of these tasks in individual sprints. And then workflows, you'll be able to customize it for specific projects where it would require a lot of detailed activities and tasks. You can customize some of these workflows on Jira. Jira is also where you can store all the project related documents, all the invoices, the bills, the project plans, or reports, assessments, reviews, documentations, presentations. You can store all of that so that at any point in time, anybody who's involved in a certain project would want to see any of those documents. They can be easily accessible to all of them. And when you are working on one project, when you're doing something, you just want to quickly nudge somebody, you can do it there. So it's real time communication and collaboration where you can comment on somebody else's work and tell them, hey, look, you're doing this activity. Looks like there's something wrong here. Why don't you fix it? You can share all of that via comments. You can mention them, etc. And of course, this beautiful reports that you see on Jira is the one that tells you whether your project is going well, not going well, are you on budget, are you on track, etc. So that is what happens in a Jira. What I would recommend is all of you just sign up for a Jira free subscription. Yep, she's already sent the video there. Just go through that video. It's fun. I've just put in, I mean, sure, you're going to get a ton of similar videos on YouTube as well. But what I would recommend is don't watch what Jira is and don't spend your time on all of that. Instead, go to Jira's website, see if there is a free trial and download Jira or sign up for the free trial. Just create a sample project for a very simple project and start putting a list of activities and all of that in Jira. It's going to be really helpful. You'll get full-fledged experience because tomorrow, when you join an organization and you're supposed to be working as a project manager on the organization in that company, you might end up using tools like Jira. So you will have some practical exposure to tools like Jira. The reason why I specifically recommended Jira is because I have used it before. I've used other tools as well, but Jira extensively. So I have a little bit of understanding of what Jira is, Atlassian owned Jira. So that's just one tool I wanted to leave you all with as part of this webinar. We want to touch upon some essentials of project management that all of you should know. If you're somebody venturing into project management, those of you who are already into project management, you must be using tools like Jira. So quick refresher for all of you once again. And more importantly, if you are trying this tool for the first time, always sign up for a free trial and just play around. It's a crucial tool to learn. You can add Jira, by the way, also as a skill to your LinkedIn profile, so that there are some job offers where they literally mention that you need to be Jira skilled, and your profile might get shortlisted on that. Awesome. So that's what I wanted to present as part of this. I didn't want to run you through a boring webinar throughout the whole 1 hour. I thought we can also address a few questions if anybody has anything. So let's spend the next 10-15 minutes on any question that some of you have. Let me look at some of the questions sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, Sumanth,
But
as you go through the questions, can I host the polls as well? It'll
sure.
take about 3 minutes. You can just go through the questions and start answering.
Awesome. I'll do that. Great. Yeah. So the first question, one of the first questions I see, apart from some comments and notes that I've seen here, is what are some common pitfalls in project management and how can they be avoided? That all the pitfalls that in project management could be because of somebody not looking at the assigned tasks and the specific deadlines and the specific budget associated with. So let me answer this in an easy way. Look at the 4 principles we have covered: cost, time, stakeholders, or quality. Pitfalls that happen in project management are somebody not doing work in a quality way, you're exceeding costs, You're not meeting deadlines and all that. So there are major pitfalls. There are a lot more individual pitfalls as well, but the most common ones, since you asked, I thought I'll probably address the most common ones. How can they be avoided? It is proper planning. And that is where project plan comes in. I'm sure all of you would have heard the word project plan previously. Project plan is an extremely crucial document. You need to have everything listed, everything under that. You need to ask for advice, suggestions. You need to bake all of that in. And you should have right tools like Jira or any other project management tool where you're going to track all of this so that you're not missing on any of this. So those are some common pitfalls and how you can avoid all of them. Now, someone is asking for someone who's experience of hotels, and if you're planning to switch, if there's a good field. See, the reason I did not want to get into individual profiles, but what I thought is the reason why I associated this course, this project management essentials, to a basic wedding, because I want to make it as generic as possible. Project management as a skill can be applied in every organization, is there in every organization. It can be a very simple project. You want to get your house painted, it's a project. You need to do so many, maybe the activities are less and the dependencies are less, but it is still a project. So if you are somebody who's in hotel management and if you want to switch, you can do it two ways. You can either identify in the same industry that you are in, the hospitality industry that you're working in currently, in the same industry, are there any project management opportunities? Because hotels have a bunch of project management too. You have a customer experience whole program that runs, and somebody has to run this. A program, by the way, is combination of projects. So if you are a project manager, you're working on one project, you're a project manager. If you are a program manager, you're working on multiple projects. So you can probably explore that as well. That might be helpful. Now, very interesting question, which is what is the difference between project management and operations management? There is similarities in both and there are nuanced differences in both. Similarities in this are in operations the differences are in operations management, you are looking at the day-to-day operations as isolated line items, which is the specific line item. How is that line item associated with this? Let's take an example. Let's take the same wedding example. Me going and identifying a vendor to cater my food is one operation, a task. So operations are how am I doing it? And using what vehicle am I going there, etc. Those are the basic operations involved for you to complete a certain task. But a project management is the overall project in itself with an end goal. Operations are what are all required as part of this. So there are some people who specifically manage only those individual activities, which are operations. And when there are some people who obviously manage the whole project. So that's major common difference. There are nuanced differences, like I said, in terms of the role, the expectations, the guidelines, the objectives, etc. Majorly, it's they are. Yeah. Project management has remote work potential. Absolutely. But what happened during COVID? I have so many friends in project management where they're just sitting in Goa or Bali or Shimla or somewhere, and they're actually working in. All you need is when you have a tool like Jira, you're executing all those tasks online. And as long as you have internet and a laptop, certainly project management can be there. Now, pharmacy, project manager, you want to work with Oracle and all that. Now, you're asking about certification. CAPM, a Certified Associate in Project Management, is a very good basic introduction level certification in project management. I'd always recommend people to actually get certifications. See, one always wonders, I'll just answer this in a very broader way, not necessarily to you. One always wonders, why am I doing certifications and courses? Let's say you have a online Manipal program. Why am I doing it? You have a certification that's completed. I'll tell you the difference. You and I both will show up at an interview, and I have not done anything. I know I am skilled in project management because maybe my own confidence, I'm experienced, I understand all of these things, so all of that, I'm skilled enough. You, on the other hand, you will go there with a Manipal certificate, maybe a CAPM certification, etc. Both of us are answering questions equally well. Somebody asks me, how do you execute? What are the 4 principles of project management? I'll be able to answer that. You're also going to do that. But they only have one job. Who are they going to give it to? That whether you or me. Of course, you will be shortlisted because you speak that language, but at the same time, you also have certifications to prove it, not me. If there's only one job, maybe if there are 2 jobs, 2 of us go, they might give it because then they will look for skill. But if they want to shortlist somebody, you should always have something that differentiates you from other people. Certifications is one way. Stakeholder alignment. Sanjeev, we may not be able to do it in detail, Sanjeevni, but what we can do as part of stakeholder alignment is think of it, like I said, with the wedding example, will be very simple. You need to align stakeholders for projects, every task associated with a project. Those stakeholders can be those who are specifically skilled in those activities or not. And not just aligning them, but you need to constantly connect with them, regularly update them. You need to keep a track of what their activities are, etc. So aligning stakeholders and managing stakeholders. So stakeholder management comes in when you actually start pursuing a proper project management course. Stakeholder management is where you're going to. Alignment is the initial phase. Then you would get into stakeholder management. Data science and AI engineer course helps in MBA project management. They're similar and they're connected because, like I said, you use a tool like Jira at some point in time. Now, to do what? There is some project, which means there is some data science project. Let's say there's an AI project which is happening. I gave you that example, Salman, when we first discussed. There's an AI solution. I want an AI solution to be implemented in my company. That's a project. Now, I need somebody who's a little bit of background, who has in data science or who's an AI engineer himself, with probably skilled in project management. Maybe you will be given the responsibility that, look, you are the one who needs to completely build this AI module into our application. So you are a project manager in that case, but at the same time, you are technically an AI engineer there. So all these fields are going to correlate at some point, depending upon which job and which company that you are looking at. And on what basis we can make WBS. Now, I don't know if you have a specific reason or a background for WBS as a specific question, since you've asked me that what basis. I'm not sure how to answer the basis part. I'll come back to that. Work breakdown structure. All right. You know what? Let's try it this way. So if you're talking about basis in terms of how long the duration it can be, Delhi is, you have a deadline and you can probably rally around the deadline and then make the work-based structure because the activities that are involved. See, you are the best judge to know how much time a certain activity would take. Based on that only, you'll be able to break down. See, I know how much time it would take me to make a couple of phone calls to speak with somebody who's in catering and finalize a deal with them. I kind of have an idea, or probably I'll do my own research and get an idea for all of these. So because I know that, I can take that as a standard to come up with my work breakdown structure. And then who should be doing this, etc. How long the duration is depends upon project to project. Project management as a career looks like someone alien to this. Lovely career. It's always ever booming with now AI coming in. There are AI project managers which are going in. So always a very, very important. So if you're somebody who's keenly or remotely interested, even if you want to do another job, for example, let's always get skilled in project management. Because in every job, in life in general, you'll be able to do this. You can be good at executing projects. So even otherwise, apart from a career, always be skilled. And Gantt charts, you have any application or you can see a simple prepare. You can do both. Gantt chart, there are apps for Gantt charts, but you can also do it on Excel sheets. You're going to get this PPT. I think probably Manipal team can give you that. If the time management for a project is majorly depending upon a client, how am I supposed to handle time management? Exactly. That is what project management is. Your client will tell you what the deadline is and tell you that here is my deadline. They are not going to give you the whole breakdown, the work breakdown structure, as somebody asked before. They will tell you, here is your deadline, here are the things that you need to deliver. So all the time management is what you need to do to meet the deadline. So it's actually not dependent upon the client. Only the deadline is dependent upon the client. Everything else is on your own. How do you manage your own time is up to you. If you're skilled enough, if you know, if you're capable, if your company has agreed to deliver that, then you should be able to come up with your own time plan to deliver that project and time as the customer asked for. With software, would you suggest, like I said, there are so many Gantt chart softwares, the Gantt AI tools these days have come up. You can use Excel sheets as well to come up with a basic Gantt chart. How do you determine the appropriate ratio or percentage to allocate a contingency fund? Are there industry benchmarks? It's a lovely question. Depends from industry to industry. Let's look at pharma industry, for example. Within pharma, big budget investments, you're looking at a specific project where you're creating a new medicine. Let's say Eli Lilly or Merck or Johnson and Johnson. They're coming up with a new medicine. If the medicine fails the quality by maybe a US Food and Safety Association, the Drug Safety Association, then what happens to all that money? It's gone. You need to literally reinvent the wheel. You need to do a lot of put in a lot of effort to actually come up, fix a lot of things, and then come up with a new medicine altogether. So then the percentage basically increases. But if it is just a software program that you have to develop and it just had a few bugs in the end, you just need additional couple of resources to fix all of that. So for that, contingency fund probably could be very less. So I can't probably give you just ratios and percentages. Uh, Standards depending upon industry and benchmarks. So there's no one answer for that one. Yeah. Bill of quantity for project management. Now, I'm not sure why you've asked bill of quantity as a specific question. If it is related to the you're asking about a specific task in project management or etc. Because otherwise it's just the list of items. So what you call in otherwise maybe a purchase order, if you are procuring the services from somebody else or not. Essentially what it has is all the details. A bill of quality will have the material, the labors and everything required for executing the task. So tomorrow, if your customer asks that what's the bill of quality for the BOQ for this project, you're going to give them, we use 10 resources, we spent 100 hours, we have bought in, etc., etc. And all of that and the estimated cost for all of them is what you're going to give. That's the bill of quality. It's almost like an Excel sheet. Meghna is asking, what is a task? Any activity is a task. Regarding PMP, I don't have core PM experience. I've been part of projects. Yeah, not necessarily you need to have experience. You can always learn, but like somebody asked before, probably do CAPM. That's the basic course to start with, and you can always progress to PMP. AI can affect project management. Maybe it will automate some of the workflows. It's not going to take over completely. It will still have project managers, I believe. Definitely, there'll be the need for project managers in the world. It's just that some of the items where you need to now come on manually create a project plan. Instead, tell an AI tool, give me a project plan, a 3-month project plan for executing a project, and AI can make its own project plan. So that way it's different. How do you balance between setting high quality standards and keeping the project realistic in terms of cost? There is always the break even, there's always a balance that needs to be done, which is how much quality is agreeable versus to achieve that quality, what's the bill of quality, what's bill of quantity, which is the cost associated with it. So you need to have all of that balance. How do you do it? Depending upon project to project. Some point of time, there's a compromise. In some cases, you don't want to compromise on the quality. You need to go and ask for additional budget for that. So at some point of time, you need to strike. It's like a swing. That's it. You need better quality, increase costs. You need lower quality, reduce costs. So you, Mr. Customer, tell me what is the quality range. So always give a range and let the decision makers decide. There are and what are the courses we can become project managers? We've answered that. Scope of healthcare professionals answered. Uh, Top project management and tracking tools. I will tell you, like I said, Jira, we've addressed that, of course. But why don't you look at Trello is another one. And there are a lot. There's Workfront and there's so many tools. The first good starting point basically will be Jira. Yep. What are effective strategies to ensure a smooth and strong transition from planning phase to execution phase? At every phase within project management, there is a closure discussion or a closure meeting. So as long as you're able to set up milestones, benchmarks, and checks for the completion of each of these courses, then you can easily transition. And in an agile kind of an environment, you need not even worry about all of that because all of that will be baked in. That Rike can be used as a project management tool. I've personally never used Rike. I've heard of it, so I can't actually comment on that part. And tools, use Jira, of course. Somebody else also mentioned that. Power BI, of course, is a great tool, but just gives you all the data. It's, like I said, each of these project management tools, they have. Asana is another tool that people mentioned. I've used partly a little bit. And does Jira work only in agile management? Absolutely not. The, well, it boils down to the question on why are people even doing waterfall these days? Maybe some projects would require, but you can always customize Jira, whether you want to do it in an agile way or in a waterfall way. Yeah. And what's the purpose of the software? Jira, we've discussed that. Ignore entry level jobs in PMP. Like I said, project managers, maybe depending upon the complexity of the project, your seniority level. Ignore the mistakes of project management, how to overcome the escalation. Yeah, interesting thing. I know we have just a couple of minutes and we don't want to keep all of you for a long time. If there are mistakes that happen in project management, one thing I've always recommended people is come openly and admit and tell people that this is a mistake and I'm going to fix it. If you try to cover up that mistake and if it ever comes out, it'll just only ruin the reputation. So always I'd recommend people to come out openly and say that. How to manage a project at last phase when there is a deadline given by client is not planned earlier. Those are impromptu scenarios and tight timelines will come. You may have to, how do you manage is set expectations right, ask for additional resources, ask for additional budget. There are ways in which for that also you need to plan contingency, which is what if goes wrong. That's back boils down back to the contingency planning. You need to always have money as contingency and time also as contingency. If you can deliver project by 1st of October, never tell that to the first to the customer as first. Set the expectation straight away that we have to do it on only 15th of October. Leave 2 weeks of contingency. MS Project and Jira for traditional projects, both similar tools. Program, project, and product management. Interesting question, and probably we can do just a couple more after this since we are at time. A project management is a list of tasks that you do to complete one project. Program management is list of projects that you do to complete one program. If you do a bunch of programs, that's called a portfolio management. So you can be a portfolio manager who has a bunch of program managers working on different programs. Each program manager might be executing a bunch of projects, and each project manager is doing a list of tasks. So that's how the hierarchy goes. And there's this Jira and Asana and the tools, all of that's there. So just pick up a couple more questions before we end this. Certifications we have covered. Manipal team, of course, will be able to tell you on which specific courses are important. I think they have some great programs that you can actually look at. And lastly, civil engineer and career growth in project management. We answered that. E-commerce industry salaries. I can't comment. I'm very sorry. And difference on different companies, etc. So I think most of the questions that I've seen here are somehow related to which tools, and we have pretty much answered all of these, which specific tools. Yeah, one question. You didn't mention planning stage as a specific stage in the project lifecycle. May I know why? I didn't want to actually cover that, Arti. That's because I've already put principles as part of this, which are all part of the planning stage, which is when once you're done with all the planning, considering these principles, you have your own project plan. That's when you get into the initiation phase. So that's the reason for not specifically putting it as planning, because anyway, it's all covered. Principles are more important than the stage itself. Awesome. So with that, you all have been great audience, very insightful questions, and I wish you all the best in all of your careers. Read more about project management. I'd always recommend people to get certified in project management and find out some online tools just to play around. Even if you're not in related to project management, one should always know a few softwares that you can play around with. With that, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day and good luck.
Thank you so much, Sumanth. It has been an invaluable session. Learners, before you leave, please provide us with feedback on this webinar by completing a survey as you exit this session. A recording of this webinar will also be made available on the LMS if you wish to view it again. And a huge shout out to all our learners. It's been great to see this level of participation. Thank you and have a very good evening. Thank you, Sumanth.
Thank you, everyone.